So I'm 23, I'm from the UK, I run a faceless YouTube channel called Wi-Fi Uni with 25,000 subscribers, and it makes me around 2 grand a month. And today I want to do something I've been meaning to do for a while, which is just walk you through what a realistic day actually looks like when you're running a channel like this. Because I think there's a version of this that people imagine, which involves waking up at noon, checking passive income notifications, doing a bit of light work for an hour, and going back to bed. And then there's the actual version. And I want to give you the actual version because I think it's both more honest and more useful. Please excuse this AI slob voice. I promise the value in this video is worth it. And before I get into it, I want to say that the day I'm going to describe is a posting day, like a day where I'm making and uploading a video. And those are different to non-posting days, which are more about research and planning. And I post every other day, so roughly half my days look like what I'm about to describe and half look a bit different. And I'll touch on both. So a posting day starts pretty normally. Like, there's nothing dramatic about the morning. I wake up, I make coffee, I do the usual stuff. And the first thing I actually do that's channel related is check the analytics from yesterday's video. And I want to be honest about what this feels like, because I think people either romanticize it or dread it, and the reality is more mundane than either. Checking analytics is mostly just gathering information. Like, I'm looking at click-through rate to see whether the thumbnail and title did their job, average view duration to see whether people stayed or dropped off and where, and the subscriber count to see whether the video brought in new people. And I look at those numbers not to feel good or bad about them, but to understand what they're telling me about what I should do differently next time. And that mindset shift from judging the numbers to reading the numbers is something that took me a while to develop, but it makes the whole analytics piece much less emotionally loaded than it was early on. The whole analytics check takes maybe 15 minutes, and then I move on. Like, I don't sit there refreshing it all morning, because that's a fast way to make yourself miserable, and it doesn't change anything. Then research. And this is probably the part of the day that most people don't picture when they imagine running a YouTube channel. Like, they imagine filming or editing, but the research is actually a significant chunk of the time, and I think it's the most important part. On a posting day, the research is usually light because I've already done the heavy research the day before. Like, the previous day, I'll have spent an hour or so figuring out the topic, checking what people are searching for in the niche, looking at what's performing well on similar channels, and making sure I actually have enough to say about the topic to fill a decent length video. And all of that work means that on the posting day itself, I'm mostly just filling in the specific details, rather than starting from scratch. The research process itself is pretty simple. I go into YouTube search and type keywords related to whatever area of the niche I'm thinking about. I look at what comes up and how many views those videos are getting. I check whether there's a clear gap, like is there a question people are searching for that doesn't have a great answer yet? And I make a note of the angle I want to take, and then I move on to scripting. Scripting is the part I find most engaging, and also the part that takes the most time. And on a typical posting day, I'll spend somewhere between an hour and 2 hours on the script, depending on the topic and how clearly I have it in my head already. My scripting process is pretty conversational. Like, I don't write in a formal way, I write the way I'd explain something to someone who was sitting across from me and wanted to understand it. And that means the script sounds natural when it goes through the voiceover tool, rather than stiff and formal. And I think that's one of the things that makes the channel feel a bit different to a lot of faceless channels, where the script sounds like it was written to be read rather than spoken. I usually write the intro last, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but I find it easier to write the hook once I know exactly what the video covers, rather than trying to write a compelling introduction to something I haven't fully worked out yet. And that approach means the intro always feels accurate to what the video actually delivers, which I think helps with watch time, because the viewer gets what the title and intro promised. Once the script is done, I run it through the voiceover tool, and this takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes, including listening back and fixing anything that sounds off. And I want to be honest that the AI voice isn't perfect. There are occasionally words it mispronounces or phrases where the intonation is slightly wrong, and I fix the ones that are genuinely distracting and let the minor ones go, because trying to get it perfect adds a lot of time for not much return. And viewers in this niche are generally pretty tolerant of a slightly imperfect voiceover as long as the content is good. Editing is the part most people think takes the longest, and for me, it's actually the fastest part of the process. And the reason is the format I settled into, which is mostly screen recordings, text on screen, and clean cuts. And none of that requires complex editing. It requires basic timing and making sure things line up. And I can usually get through the edit in 45 minutes to an hour for a 10 to 15 minute video. I don't add a lot of B-roll, I don't spend time on fancy transitions, I don't color grade anything, and I made a deliberate decision early on that I wasn't going to compete on production quality, because that's a race I'd lose against bigger channels with more resources. And instead, I'd compete on information quality and clarity. And that means the editing is functional rather than impressive. And that's completely fine. The text on screen stuff I mostly do with auto caption tools, which just generate it automatically. And I do a quick check to make sure nothing's been transcribed weirdly, and then it's basically done. Thumbnail is the thing I probably spend more time on than anything else in the production process, relative to how quick it is. And what I mean by that is I'll spend 15 to 20 minutes on a thumbnail, but I'm quite deliberate about those 15 to 20 minutes. Like, I'm not just making something that looks okay, I'm thinking about whether this thumbnail would make me click if I saw it in a feed. And if the honest answer is no, then I'll change it until the answer is yes. The thumbnail is the first thing anyone sees before they decide whether to click. And a video with a bad thumbnail will get almost no views, regardless of how good the content is. And I learned that the hard way in the first few months, when I was making decent content but putting mediocre thumbnails on it, and then wondering why nobody was clicking. Then there's the upload process, which is pretty mechanical. Write the description, add the tags, paste in the affiliate links, schedule the publish time, and that whole thing takes maybe 15 minutes. And then the video's done, and I move on with the day. And this is the bit that I think surprises people when I describe it. Like, the whole process from sitting down to start to scheduling the upload is usually somewhere between 3 and 4 hours. Sometimes less if the topic is clear and the scripting flows well. And that's it. That's a posting day. And the rest of the day is just normal life. And I think people imagine it takes significantly longer than it does. And the reason it doesn't is just that the faceless format removes so much of the time that conventional YouTube channels spend on camera setup and filming and editing footage of a person. Non-posting days look a bit different. And what I mostly do on those is a combination of research for upcoming videos, responding to sponsor emails, and handling any deals that are in progress, checking in on the school community and adding content or responding to members, and occasionally doing some longer-term thinking about the channel direction, like what topics I want to cover over the next few weeks, and whether there are any gaps in the content I should be filling. The sponsor stuff is worth describing because I think people imagine it's more complicated than it is. Like, mostly it's just emails. A company reaches out, I look at their product, I decide whether it fits the channel and whether I genuinely recommend it. I agree on a rate, and then the integration just goes into the next relevant video naturally. And the whole negotiation is usually 2 or 3 emails and done. And I've got to the point where I can tell pretty quickly from the first email whether a deal is worth pursuing. And the school community adds maybe 30 minutes to an hour to a non-posting day. Like, I post the daily niche drop, I respond to any questions or comments, I add anything new to the courses, and that's it. And I think the community is actually quite a natural thing to maintain, because the people in it are genuinely interested in the same stuff I'm interested in. So it doesn't feel like a chore the way maintaining something you're not interested in would. So the honest picture is that running Wi-Fi Uni takes somewhere between 3 and 5 hours on a posting day, and 1 to 2 hours on a non-posting day, and the rest of the time is genuinely free. And I think that's the thing that makes this model so interesting compared to a job. Not that it's effortless, because it isn't, but that the effort is concentrated, and the returns compound independently of whether I'm actively working on it in that moment. The videos I made 6 months ago are still earning from affiliates today. The school community earns every month regardless of how many hours I put in that specific week. The sponsor deals I closed last month paid out regardless of what I'm doing this month. And that separation between the time I put in and the income I receive is what makes it feel genuinely different to trading hours for a salary. At 23, doing 3 to 5 hours of work I actually find interesting most days. Making $2,000 a month from a channel nobody knows the face behind, I'm pretty happy with how the day looks. If you want help building something like this, I do have a school community linked in the description. There's one-to-one feedback available depending on which tier you join. No pressure at all. Cheers for watching.